Hey, what's up? I'm Christina and welcome to another episode of Baking with Chickens Live. I am in my flower garden today and we're going to talk about edible flowers. I'm going to show you how to make my pressed shortbread flour cookies, and I'm going to tell you all about these edible flowers and how to cook with them. You ready? All right, let's go back down into the kitchen and let's go make some cookies. Check it out, I've got my Easter basket. I picked all my flowers, I got my eggs for today's cookies, and I cannot wait to show you how to make these beautiful pressed flour cookies made out of edible flowers. If you are baking along today and you want to make these shortbread cookies, the link is on my website at bakingwithchickens.com, and it's also down in the description below. Let's get going. Bak bak bake. Let me show you the ingredients I have for these cookies. The recipe on my site is for lemon chamomile cookies, but really you can use any herbs. So whatever you got on hand totally works, and I'll talk about that. All right, so for this, I've got 1 cup/2 sticks of butter. So room temp butter, you want it to be soft. I've got my granulated sugar here. I've also got 2 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour. I've got a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and then I have my herbs. You flavor your shortbread cookies with any herbs you want. You can mix and match sweet, savory. I'm actually going to make mine with some Earl Grey tea and lavender. So the first thing we need to do is add the butter into my mixer. So butter in. And room temp butter is really important here, you guys, because if you don't have room temp butter and it's still cold, it is not gonna mix nicely with your sugar. And when I was kind of newer to baking and I was impatient, I'm still impatient, but I've learned a lot since then, I would just be like, oh, whatever, it's fine. It is not fine. Take the time to get room temp butter. Soften it if you have to, because it makes all the difference of making beautiful buttery shortbread. Okay, so I'm gonna do butter and sugar into the bowl, and we're gonna cream it. So the reason why most cookie recipes start with butter and sugar and you cream it is because the sugar and the butter whipped together is gonna give you that fluffy cookie texture. All right. So give me 1 sec, and we're just gonna cream this. There you go. So you should have nice whippy butter. That sugar is nicely incorporated, and then I'm gonna scrape down the sides before the next step. So now my butter and my sugar is creamed. I've got my flour, I've got salt. I'm gonna mix all the dry ingredients together. So I'm gonna put the salt in, I'm gonna add in my Earl Grey tea leaves, and then I'm gonna show you my little mortar and pestle. So here I've got, so I already ground some so it wouldn't take forever, but here is some dried lavender. Now, if you don't want to do a hand ground mortar and pestle like I am because I'm a crazy person, you can just throw these in a food processor, in a Ninja, in a whatever thing you have that can pulverize herbs very finely is the best way to do it. But I like doing this hand mortar and pestle. So I am now stirring my dry ingredients together. I have this bowl that's a little bit too small, so I'm being tender with it. I'm just stirring in all of the stuff with the flour. Now I'm just gonna add all the dry ingredients into the butter and the sugar, and then we're gonna mix that all together. Yeah. So now you should have a nice crumbly dough in here. With a lot of these kind of like herb-based cookies, any cookies really, honestly, letting your cookie dough sit and rest for a few hours is really, really ideal, because it will allow the flavors in your cookies to just kind of meld together and settle and infuse better. So I'm just using my hands to mush it all together to make a nice dough. Because this is butter, so if it's hot and it's very warm in your kitchen, it might become too soft and be difficult to work with. So if that happens, you just need to pop it in the fridge or in the freezer to chill a little bit, right? It's butter, so if it's too hot, the butter is gonna start melting, and if it's, so you need to chill it down to get it to hold together. Okay, so I have all these flowers that I picked. I rinsed a couple off here and I patted them dry. I've been picking them all and drying them between sheets of parchment paper in my cookbooks so that I can use them later. So I've taken about half of my cookie dough and I've placed it here on my flat surface. I like to roll my shortbread and my pie doughs between sheets of parchment paper to prevent sticking. I'm gonna sprinkle a little bit of flour. So I'm gonna cover it between sheets of parchment paper so that they don't stick and you don't have to use so much flour, which makes your cookies and your pie dough dry and gummy and yucky. So I'm just gonna roll it until it's about a 1/4 inch thick or so. A wine bottle makes a perfect rolling pin substitute. Yeah, see, check it out. Okay, so you want a wine bottle like this, right? That's flat and cylindrical, not like a bulbousy one. And you just go like that. Totally works. Crazy, huh? So I'm gonna flour this a little bit. So this is my way of getting this off the paper without it sticking, right? Okay, so now I do this with my pie dough too. So I go like this, I hold both of them, I put one hand on top, and then really fast, with conviction, flip it. Okay, ready? That's it. See, look, no sticking. How beautiful. So I am using these cookie cutters that I bought, the round cookie cutters to cut round shapes. If you don't have round cookie cutters, anything works, whatever you got. You got a cup? Use a cup. You got a ravioli stamp? Use a ravioli stamp. A lid of a mason jar? Use that. So I'm gonna use my cookie cutters and I'm gonna press these little cookies in and cut my shapes out. And then I pick my flowers. So here, I'm gonna use one of my pretty pansies and I'm just gonna stick it here on top. I can do 2 flowers per cookie. So I just basically take them and I just like press them into the tops. So after you've pressed them, so this is the press the flowers on before you bake, put your parchment paper on top again, and then just give it a little roll to flatten and press it. Like, don't press too hard, just a little, to like adhere it, peel it off, cut it out again, and stick it on your baking sheet. There we go. Okay, and then any leftover dough, we just kind of like smash together and re-roll. Here we go. I've got my tray of cookies. So I have one set that's already pressed here, and we're gonna see how those bake up. And then I have these without flowers, and I'm gonna put the flowers on after while the cookies are still hot. These are gonna go into the oven for about 15-ish minutes, just until they're a very light golden brown. You don't wanna overbake them because then they're hard and crispy. Into the oven they go. All right, bake, my beautiful children, bake. So you'll know the cookies are done when they're just slightly golden brown on the edges. The bake time is really gonna depend on one, your oven temp, and also your cookie thickness. So the thicker your cookies, the longer they're gonna take to bake, right? The thinner they are, they're gonna bake up a lot faster. Ooh, look at those, kind of got all nasty. I don't like the way that looks. I'm gonna pull those off. So while these are cooling down a little bit, I'm gonna make a glaze. And the reason why I like to put just a tiny, tiny thin glaze on the cookies is it just gives it an extra oomph, like a little extra flavor, something, pop that the cookies really need. I find shortbread, plain shortbread cookies just to be a little too plain and dry, and when you do a glaze, it just gives it that little extra something that makes it very delicious. The proportion is about 1/3 of powdered sugar to about a tablespoon of liquid. So today I'm just using powdered sugar and oat milk. Because I'm doing an Earl Grey and lavender cookie, I want a flavor that is gonna match with it. And I kinda like it because it looks like Han Solo, like encased in carbonite. If you are a Star Wars nerd like that, you know what I'm talking about. If you're not, don't worry about it. Nerd fest. Okay, so I have more milk here than I need. And this is like, you don't have to worry about being exact. What I like about like powdered sugars and glazes is that you just kind of mix and match until you get the consistency you want. So see, like it's nice and runny. I mean, it's really up to you. I find that Slightly runny is better. You want it to be able to coat the spoon. So see, like it's kind of coating the back of the spoon here and it's dripping but slowly. So we're gonna let the cookies cool on the pan for a little bit before transferring it, because you need the cookies to continue to bake a little bit on the pan to stiffen before you lift them out. If you lift them out when they're too hot, they're gonna be soft and crumbly and they're gonna fall apart and all your hard work is gone. You want the cookies to be a little bit cool before you start glazing them, because if it's too hot, the glaze is just gonna melt right off. I'm gonna brush these because they're feeling pretty good. So I've got my glaze, I've got a little brush. I like using a silicone brush. It doesn't really matter what you got. Use what you have. And then I just dip it and get a little bit, whoops. And then I just brush a very, very thin glaze on top. And then when it dries, it'll dry clear. And like I said, nerdy Star Wars reference, it looks like Han Solo encased in carbonite. And it tickles me to no end. Ta-da! All right, look at that. These are so beautiful. So this one is a cookie that was pressed with flowers after baking. So you see it doesn't really adhere and press down as well. They got a little wrinkled, but they're okay. They're sticking up. The glaze is holding them down. I would say these are so-so. I'm okay with the way this looks. And then the one right behind it, where are we? This one. Again, also cool. I like that the fresh flowers are brighter. I think using the dried flowers for this technique is definitely the way to go. And if we come this way over to the side, follow my finger, follow my finger. So these over here are the ones that were pressed before baking, and I find that these look significantly better. I like the way that these, well, like with the fresh flowers anyway, like they adhered better, they pressed down. I think, you know, and it has a baked quality to it. Like this just kind of looks like I shoved some flowers on top of a cookie and painted them, which is what I did. Whereas these, I feel, look a bit more refined. They look like they're composed. They're meant to be this way. So fresh flowers, press and bake. Dried flowers, press after. All right, let's try it. It's buttery, it's crispy, it's got that little hint of sweet from the glaze that I really, really like. And then it's got Earl Grey and lavender, but it's not like too much. And ooh, I got a little hit of salt from that quarter teaspoon of salt. Here, I'm gonna show you here. See, look at that. It's very good. I love it. I'm gonna keep eating another one. Hit subscribe, like, all of those things. Thank you so much for watching, you guys. Bake on, everybody, and thank you for watching. Until next time, I'm Christina, your host. These are my dirty poop chickens, and bok bok bake.